Okay, good morning. So we are up to Siman Daled Shin, 304, and we're halfway through Aleph. So let me just quickly remind you what we did yesterday. There are three categories. The first category is Leman Yanuach Avdecha V'Amoscha Kamoicha. So the first pasuk of Leman Yanuach Avdecha, that your Eved and your Amos should rest Kamoicha, that is referring to an Eved Shemol the Toval, that he's had bris milah and he's done tefillah, and he's makabel all mitzvahs. And we said yesterday in the Hakdom in the Mishnah Berurah, he said that person has got a din like an isha, that he's got to keep kol haTorah kula apart from the mitzvah shazman groma. Also lasos malacha, we said you can't do, he cannot do malacha, and the shvisas eved is mutl al Rabbi, and the Rabbi can't ask him to do any malacha. So he's pretty much like a regular Yisrael, to pretty much to all extent and purpose, and therefore Leman Yanuach Avdecha, we're referring to that type of person. Then we says Vayinofesh ben Amosecha, that is talking about an Eved who is loymol v'loy toval, but he has been makabel zayin mitzvah neach, and therefore it's also for him to do work for Yisrael, but he can do himself. It's mutar la'atzmo because Shabbos is not one of the 7 mitzvahs neach, and therefore he can do work for himself. Okay, and then you've got the third category, which is this Eved is no Mila, no Tvila, and he hasn't even couple all mitzvahs, and that is the machlekes that the Machaba is referring to. So let's take a look. We're up to a Mikol Makom. So if we start Yesh Cholkim, which is 2 lines from the bottom of the Machaba, for Yesh Cholkim Matirim Bezeh, or Mikol Makom Im Hoya Oiseh Meleches Rabbi Shalei Medaitai. But nevertheless, if he does Melacha without the das of his Rebbe, and it's not clear that he's doing it for his sake, it's mutter, you don't have to stop him doing it. Even really if he's makabel al mitzvahs, the 7 mitzvahs, because like I said, Shabbos is not included in that. But Yisrael, acher she'ena rabbi, and to do work for another Yisrael, afilu oisel das Yisrael mutter, that will be okay. Kol she'en sham amir Yisrael, so long as you didn't instruct him to do it. Ubelvad shelo yehena Yisrael b'Shabbos me'ez melacha, so long as there's no hana, which again is all the amir al-akum type of stuff that we'll get to in Mitzvah Hashem. Okay, so let's do the Mishnah Berurah on that. We're back on the previous Amud Sivkot and Yud Aleph. Im hoya oiseh hainu da'af demavua le'el shematzuv al shvisas avdoi bein shekil alav shev mitzvahs bein shelo yekil alav shelo yaseh melacha avur. He can't do melacha for him. Hainu dafka b'denich le melacha zu, and I want this melacha because I'm doing it for his benefit, and therefore you got to stop him. When it's clear that he's not doing it for the benefit of the Rebbe, it's as if he's doing it for himself. You don't have to stop him. The problem is dafka for his, it's Leman Yanuach Avdecha, but for another Yisrael, because we assume he's doing it for the benefit of the Rebbe, but if he's doing it for himself, for the Yisrael, for another Yisrael, even though he's doing it for another Jewish person, so long as you didn't instruct him, and he starts doing it himself, is doing it for his own benefit, to benefit in some way, to get payment or whatever. The only issa is if he instructs him to do it. Okay, mutter, yud gimel, v'ayin siman reishon base, sif base, sometimes even for midrabanan we insist that we protest against his work. Yud daled, the Chazal made the takana, you shouldn't get any hana from their melacha. It's no different to any other non-Jewish person. The alma also melacha l'das Yisrael, who does work for Yisrael. You can't benefit from the work done for a Yisrael. Okay, ad kan. Now let's go back to the Machaba. Second line on page Tzadi Daled. So we're in Siman Shin Daled Sif Aleph. Halfway through, top of the next page, second line. V'yesh Eimrim shekol sheloi kibel olav sheva mitzvahs b'nei noach. For a non-Jewish person who has not had Mila or Tvila and has not been makabel sheva mitzvahs b'nei noach, given to ein Yehudi Gomor, who he is considered like a full-fledged non-Jewish person, ein Rabbi Muzhar olav. the Rebbe is not Musa, is not commanded to stop him doing anything on Melacha on Shabbos. Therefore, when it comes to a Chayla She'en Bei Sakana V'chein Tzarchi Meis beyond of Rishon, Mutter Loima Lohem La'asosei, you're allowed to instruct him to do that, to get involved, like you can to tell a non-Jewish person to do anything for a Chayla She'en Bei Sakana. We'll get to Hilchos Refuah. Hashem, but that's an important halacha, that any person who's categorized as a chilish ein bo sakana, right? His bed bound, his nechlash kol gufa, whatever the definition is, you can get a non-Jewish person to do anything. And any hospital patient is considered a nechla, is a chilish ein bo sakana, minimally. Obviously, it can be more, but he's at least a chilish ein bo sakana, and therefore getting a non-Jewish person even to do duraisas, so if you've got a person in the hospital and they want a cup of tea, you can tell the nurse, can you please put the kettle on and boil the water so you can have a cup of tea. You're allowed to do that because Amir La'akam for Chilish Mizakon is mutter. Okay, well that's not for here. Okay, let's just do the Mishnah Berurah on that point before we do the Ramah. Sif Katan Tez Vav, Tez Zayin. No, Tez Vav, right? Tez Vav, second line in the Mishnah Berurah. For Yesh Omrim, Shekal, etc. Svirluhu, Deloy Zira Torah al Eved, Shal Yisrael, Inyan Shabbos, Elabish Yesh Alav al Kol Ponim Ktsas Mitzvahs. V'hainu Sheva Mizbnei Noach, Umavu B'beis Yosef Ein Sham, V'ayin Beli Rabba Shehevi B'Shem Kama Poiskim, Telemaisi Yesh Lahach Mikasvar Rishayna, V'also Leima, and we're strict that we don't get him to do, even if he's not Makabal al Mitzvahs, not to do that. Also Leima Lemumok V'Karoim, it's also to tell a Mumar, so that means a renegade Jew, the Karoim and a Karaite Jew who only keeps the Torah Shebechsav, Lazas le Melacha b'Shabbos v'Yontav, you can't tell them to do Melacha for you, to Oiver Mishum Lifnei Iver, because ultimately they're still Jewish and therefore it's a problem of Lifnei Iver. Okay, now to the Ramah. So we're in Shin Dalet Sif Aleph in the Ramah. Says the Ramah, V'chol Eved shemetzaveh al shvis osei. Now any Eved where you are commanded that he needs to rest on Shabbos, also lot says b'chaysim she'also by Rabbi. This Eved in the olden days they used to wear like a badge, a necklace with a sign that he's an Eved. So you can't wear that on Shabbos. Laharis b'shu avdoi v'imhu shel tit, if it's made out of clay, mutalasis b'kushatoli b'tzavar. Then that would be okay if it's hanging around his neck. Avaloi b'chsusa, not if it's on his begodim. Or v'shel mateches, but if the label is made out of metal, b'chol inyan osa, then it's always going to be osa. We'll see why. It's a problem of hitzah. Ve'im ha'eved also ha'chosem niyatzma, if he did it himself, afilu b'shel tit b'chol inin also, then even if it's made out of clay, it would be also. So what's going on over here? Says the Mishnah Berurah, Sif Cotton Tes Zayin. V'chol eved. Ikoi gam ha'eved shaloi tov v'shaloi mol v'toval. Ayin b'tesef Shabbos prima godim. Okay, they discuss what type of eved we're talking about, even if it's an eved who may not have had tvila or mila. Also, Lot says you can't go out with this sort of badge, this necklace badge. Hine, mitchila sosam hadova. At the beginning it's soisem, v'achach bied im yesh bo tartim l'man yosef. And later, the Ramah explains that if there are two things to his advantage, then it would be okay. What are those two things? The hainu sha'achaysim hoyeshel tit v'hu toli b'tzavari. Number one, the badge is made out of clay, and it's around his neck. In that situation, mutalot sisbay. Dilma noch dilmai nochashle. What are you worried about? Dilasheme yasirena biyoda v'yavienu dalad amas b'shus rabim. Are you worried that he's going to carry it 4 amas in b'shus rabim? Bavada lekalameikash. No way. We're not worried about that. T'is alei emta the rabbi. He's scared of his rabbi. Sheyoma l'shasir k'dei laharis shu ben chayrin. That he doesn't want to remove it to sort of pretend he's a ben chayrin, or l'sheme yisfosek v'yishave ha'chaysim me'elov. Maybe it will break b'shus rabim v'asli suya v'achach lebeisei, and maybe he'll carry it home. Gam kein lekalameikash. We're not worried about that either. T'lemay v'yenoi. Well, why should he bring it? The chaysim shava shel tit leichazi lemidi. If it's made out of clay, it's finished. You're not going to wear it tomorrow. It's no longer usable. V'im kadei laharis l'rabbi shu kafaflei, and if it's to show sort of allegiance and obedience to his rebbe, to his adon, v'oichis biyada achaysim shel avdos zein a siman klal shel avdos. The only way you're showing obedience and allegiance to your adon is by wearing it like an eved around your neck. But if there's got only one of these advantages, for example, if it was on your clothes, then in either of those situations, also losses belishus rabim uchadila kame. Okay. Let's just finish the Mishnah Berurah, and then there's a very interesting footnote. Maybe the thing will break. Umirtat mirabba, and he'll be scared of his rav, his Odin, Sheyema She'esir K'dei Laharish L'chol Shehu Ben Cherem, because he's trying to intimate that he is a free man. V'yikapel Talisa K'dei Shelo Yisroel V'okam HaChaysav Yisa'enu al Ksefei, V'dom Yatalis al Ksefei V'kamasui, and for him it will be like a masui. Or V'shem Mateches, the Kivin Shu Choshev V'kopit Olov Rabbi Shelo Yovet Chashin and Dilma Mifsik V'osid Asui Dal Adamas B'shus Rabbi. When it comes to a metal one, it will, it's still usable, and then there'll be a concern he may carry it. B'chol Inyan, Hainu Afilu K'shel Toli Al Tzavora V'atam, that if he made it himself, then we say it's always asa, even if it's made out of tit. V'atam v'kiven the shehu also l'asma, since he made it himself, eina mirtas mirabe she'eseren v'chashina dil mashakil lebiyodei v'yavina daladamas v'shrabim, and he might come to carry it home and daladamas v'shrabim. Okay, so we may think, very nice, it doesn't really apply to me now, these halachas, no avodim anymore, and these halachas are quite dated. Take a look at in the footnote 11. There are two very interesting, relevant halachas that emerge from this. Number one is wearing a watch on Shabbos, and number two is a person, a chayla, who has some sort of petek, which is kosher on his hands, like a bracelet type thing. Can you go out with that on Shabbos? Again, of course, where there's no Eruv we're talking about. So take a look at 11. Here we go. The Inyan Yetzias HaShabbos Rishus Rabim Im Sha'on Yad. Going out with a watch on Shabbos. In the name of Moshe it says, Sheish lo yichiach she'adav muta me'aheta shel eved lo seisim chaysim. We can bring a raya that it's muta from our sif of an eved going out with this chaysim, with this sort of label on him. It's not an item of jewelry, and it's not an item of clothing. Since this is the way for an eved to wear it regularly, it's got a din of one of his items of clothing. And therefore, so too, a watch, a hand watch, a wristwatch. Since you normally you wear it the whole time, it may not be a tachshit, like for a woman it would be, but we said, but for a man it may not be considered a tachshit, and is not an item of clothing. Nevertheless, so Ramosha says that it's mutter to wear a wristwatch on Shabbos in a place where there's no Eruv. He says that Bal Nefesh Yachmir, etc., etc. But you shouldn't be meicha. He says against the person who's wearing a wristwatch, and the heta is based on this for the reasons we said. Now, it's not unanimous. He brings here of Scheinberg. He doesn't like the proof. He doesn't like the proof that Ramosha brings. The Eved's label or necklace around his neck saying that his Eved, maybe that's considered like a malbush, because that's serving the body. Because without it, it's like in the school we wear lanyards. So you can't get into school without a lanyard, member of staff or a student. The security is very tight. So too the Eved. I don't want to equate students and teachers to avodim, but the Eved also can't go out without it because of fear of his upsetting his Rebbe. And therefore that's just his normal way of operating. Masha'enkein with a hand watch, a wristwatch, you can definitely go out without it. You take it off when you go to bed, or when you put your tefillin on, or when you go to take a shower. And therefore, Shabbos said it's not considered a malbush, and therefore, he takes away what?
Doesn't it make more Muslim?
Or Scheinberg?
Oh,
okay. So that's the machlokes. Okay, fine. Now look, that's the first thing. The second thing is, what about the chayle going out with this bracelet or this wristband that he's saying that he's, to tell him that he's a patient? Next paragraph. When it comes to a chayle in petek hakosher al yodoi ubay roshim meida refui hayochel l'shamish la'atzolas chayov. B'shas chirem, he's told what his medication is or what his illness is or whatever when he's discharged. V'yari lot says below petek then he's worried to go out without it. Das Scheinberg is shenechshav tiltel hapesek b'tzorich gufa halichosei. That petek is considered tiltel gufa halichosei. Yore lot says sham biladov. because he's scared to go out without it. And that we can learn out from the Eved. So the petek of the Chayla, even Rabbi Sheinberg would agree, would be okay, etc. Okay, so fine. Okay, so that's that. So two very relevant halachas. Number one, wearing a wristwatch on Shabbos. We've discussed it before, but it's based. The Moshe says based on this, it's a good raya for it. That you're able to wear it. That the label, the necklace of this Eved, saying that he's an Eved, is not a malbush, it's not a tachshit. It's just this is what he wears regularly, and therefore a wristwatch could be in the same category. Rabbi Sheinberg says no, he wears it because he's scared to go out without it. Mashenkin, the wristwatch, we take it off when we sleep, when we shower, when we put on tefillin, etc. Okay, and Mashenkin, the petek that the Chayla wears, that even Rabbi Sheinberg would say that would be okay. All right, let's just finish off Beis and Gimel. They're quite short, and then that's the end of this siman. Says the Mechaba, v'heichad muta ha'eved. Now, where it's okay for this Eved to do melacha for himself, if the Odin says, listen, you go work for yourself, and whatever you earn and whatever you keep, that can be your upkeep, your food for Shabbos. You work and then you can go buy the food for Shabbos. Since you agreed this before Shabbos, he can do that. But so long as this Eved is doing it discreetly in private, then the people don't think that he's doing it for the Odin. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Im Omar leha Odin, Shem yirtze shelo lezunah v'yishayachzo Eved al psochim harshus biyadai, because if they agree that I'm not going to feed you, that's the deal of an Eved, and you go knock on the doors and you arrange it yourself and you can keep whatever you get. Therefore, whatever he's doing is doing for his own benefit. Says the Mishnah Berurah Chaf Beis, you can't make this arrangement on Shabbos itself. If he didn't make any arrangements, he's just sort of doing his own enterprise. The Yisrael never told him he can do it. That you shouldn't be making if there wasn't an arrangement before Shabbos. Even in his own Rebbe's house, he's doing it in the privacy of his own bedroom or wherever, that's okay. But you can't do it for the benefit of another Jew. It's got to be only for his own benefit. Because he is, on the end of the day, an Eved of Yisrael. Okay, Gimel. Shehu Sachir. If you have a full-fledged non-Jewish person, Shehu Sachir, who's a worker, Ein Rabbi Mitzuvay al Shvisasei. So you've got an employee, you've got a worker who's working for you. He's a full-fledged Ein Yehudi. So there's no Tefillah, there's no Mila, there's nothing. He's just working for you. So then you're not Mitzuv on his Shvisa. What he does is none of your business, and therefore it's not caught, if you like, by any of these psukim of Lemanyon Nuach, etc., etc. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Ein Yehudi Gom. But if he has in a couple Sheva mitzvahs, haloi hu ger toishav, then he's got a status of a ger toishav. Also lases malacha Yisrael af lemisha ein rabbi, and then he can't do malacha for Yisrael v'chanal. I'm berama perik yudad mihilchas ribia ve'ein mekabim ger toishav is man she'ein hayovel neig. Nowadays there's no yovel, therefore there's no ger toishav. V'chein evet she'ein reitz lekabel lov mitzvahs ki im shev mitzvah ger toishav gam kein ein mekabel nesub is man she'ein hayovel neig va'arayvet sham chelik al zeh v'ayin sham. So machlek is Rambam Raivet whether you can have a ger toishav or for nowadays. Okay, shil sochir. Even if it's a long-standing arrangement, he's working for me for 10 years, let's say, that's the contract. It's not a kinyan olam. And the Valkain, it's not a permanent kinyan. Valkain, afilu me'osim melachas rabbi, ein osam midaraisa, she'ena bechlal avdei. V'hamelachas hamotoras lechatchila l'dei en Yehudi gam muta gam al yodei. They can also be done through him. Because of Beis Yosef she'amari nistapik ba'osin avodim v'hashvachas of the gilulim shemrotzu lahamir dosam, that they want to leave their religion v'likonis l'dasi Yishmael and join the Bnei Yishmael Islam yoitzim lecherus. They go free. Even though they may have a kinyan olam to the Yisrael now, v'das achrenim lahachmim b'zeh mipnei sheyesh b'zeh chashash isotera for them to do work for you on Shabbos. V'kol shkenim hu b'makom she'ein lo rishus lefi dinehem lafki asa b'maristal. So according to their rules, they're not allowed to. Shebazeh vaday also lasos malacha b'Shabbos l'Yisrael. Then there's more reason to say that they still can't do malacha for Yisrael on Shabbos. Ein Rabbi Mitzuva b'makom shem ha'melech yorim hoidei. Amazing. Even when the melech, who's the melech in the time of the Chaim, the Polish, or the Tsar, or I don't know. When the Melech Yoram Hoyde Gozar Shein Shum Adam Chutz Midosam Yochayden Liknes Eved V'Ama. You're not allowed to own an Eved. V'Avodim Ashvachas Yochayden Lahaver Eish B'Shabbos. Then they can do all this on Shabbos to have you on Kesachir B'Ama because they're not an Eved anymore. They've got a din of a Sachir. Avol Yesh Chalkim Usfirlei the Af Ata Guf Kon Yisrael. At the end of the day, Mentzat Halacha they are Guf Kon Yisrael. V'Achshav Sheparim. Karga ba'at avodim shvachas. Nowadays we pay tax for them. Lekula am guf and koni. They are considered their guf is koni for the Yisrael. V'asurim b'melacha v'chein lekula. Dahainu sheyochel mamzer lisa shivcha ve'eved mamzeres and lekula as well. They've got a full-fledged din of an eved, and therefore the eved could marry the mamzeres, etc., etc. Okay, so just to summarize, you see three categories which of eved. Number one is the Eved, the Pasuk says, Laman Yonuach Avducha V'Moscha Kamoicha, and that is an Eved Shemol V'Toval, and he's Makabel Ol Mitzvahs, and therefore he's like a full-fledged Jew, like an Isha. It's just that they're parts of Mitzvahs Isha's Mangroma, and they can't do any Melacha because the Shvis Eved is Mutal on the Rabbi, and therefore they can't do any Melacha. Then you've got the next Pasuk, which is V'Nofesh Ben Amosecha. That's talking about a non-Jewish person who's Lo Mol V'Lo Toval, No Mila No Tvila, and he has been Makabel Zay Mitzvahs, so he can't do it for Yisrael. He can't do any Melacha for Yisrael on Shabbos because of this Pasuk, but he can do it for himself. And then you have the third category, which is no mila, no tefillah, and he hasn't been makabel anything, and that's a machlokas whether he can do it for Yisrael or not. And then you have a sachir who is not koine, he's not there's no kinyan bichlal. So then he's like any Yehudi gomer, and he can do what he wants. That's not mis. And then you have all the halachas amir lakum, which is that's all of these are. All right, we'll leave it there. We'll stop here now. Okay.